Dr. David Wilson.
I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to support this bill, the Public Finance Amendment Bill. Just a brief little glimpse of history here. 1989, 37 years old. And I've got to give it to my predecessor here from the ACT Party. This is the highlight of that whole neoliberal era. Because of this finance amendment bill, we are going to take it a little bit further and ensure that it continues in the way that it has been. We did fantastic things as a result of this. In fact, the government was held to account. Fancy that. We got to a position where we actually figured out what the government was spending, where the revenue was coming, and actually we had to make that transparent to the public. Fabulous. Novel idea. Regular reporting, fiscal strategy, accountability, financials of the government departments, ministers and government entities, transparency in how taxpayers' money is spent. Pretty damned important. Skews the rhetoric there. Asset management, borrowing limits. Some of this House don't understand that or those words. Required government to produce a balance sheet. You know, balance sheet, revenue, expenditure, assets, what we own, currently at about $500 billion worth of assets owned by the government. Pretty important to get this stuff right. At the end of that period, we had, and these are words that we don't hear much these days, a fiscal surplus. Get the balance right, the books right. Now, I've heard from the opposition around reducing and getting rid of the wellbeing out of this Act. Well, I can come back to that a little bit because I've spent a lot of time and I understand where they're coming from with wellbeing economics. And in fact, I've read the same Bobby Kennedy quote myself on a number of occasions. It's very important for us to understand what these wellbeings are. In fact, the Living Standards Framework started off because they gave it to Treasury. It only had 4. We ended up with around 7. So you've got to look at the natural capital, financial capital, economic capital, institutional, social, environmental, cultural and human capital, which a previous member from the Greens was alluding to. Yes, these are all very, very important things, but economic and financial is part of that, and if we get that part right, we may have a chance of getting the other parts right. So here we are. We're going to make some tweaks to this amazing bill from the neoliberal era. Tweaks in pragmatism, strengthening fiscal responsibility, transparency regarding special fiscal risks. Oh, how the Minister has mentioned Pharmac and the $2 billion spend to rectify that. I think they call that a special fiscal risk and the impact that that had. But you might also say that a special fiscal risk was the previous finance minister. Large-scale asset purchasing program. Does anyone in the street have the faintest idea what those words mean? If you look up large-scale asset purchasing program, it is regarded as an unconventional monetary policy where the central bank buys government bonds. Well, what the net effect of that is, an extra $50 billion that Labor and the finance manager could spend on behalf of us all to inject money into the economy called quantitative easing. And that might explain half or at least 2/3 of why we ended up with so much debt that we had to deal with. Leading into this thing, we had the HAFU, the half-yearly economic and fiscal update prior to us coming into government. Can anybody remember that? How, you know, it was just so opportunistic and so beneficial for them that actually we kind of got it wrong, didn't we, leading into the last election? In fact, a wily old customer that is a friend of mine and a colleague and my boss said to me before the election, I think this is wrong. I think they've underestimated how much debt we have and what we've got to recover. This is a deep, dark hole that they have dug for us and we're going to have to climb our way out. I said, it can't be that bad, sir. Well, he was right. It was a deep, dark hole of debt that we had to climb out of. It's very difficult to act green when you're in the red. You've actually got to get the books in order so that you can do the good things that we need in life. The well-being, yep, we agree with that. We want increased well-being, absolutely. The Living Standards Framework was a step in the right direction. There was great people behind that, but you've got to admit that all of those Living Standards Framework metrics were substitutes for the real thing. You know, it's a funny thing. In the end, GDP, you can count it. Financials, you can count them. We know what the numbers are. Your metrics don't give the whole answer, and you know it. And also, let's think about the obfuscation and the amount of stuff that the Treasury had to face up to by doing this Living Standards Framework. Perhaps there may be just an inch of truth in the idea that they were somewhat distracted at that famous hayfu. But we'll leave you to think through that. So we are repealing the wellbeing objectives, and we're going to publish a tax expenditure statement. I'll repeat that. A tax expenditure statement. Labor, have you heard of one of those? You know, we're going to count what we spend so the public can understand what the implication of these changes are. Isn't this fabulous, this stuff? I love it. I love it. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First supports this bill because it fulfills our commitment in the coalition agreement to improve the quality of government spending, whereby we can improve the quality of the well-being of every citizen in this country. We commend this bill to the House.